Good evening, everyone. Your presence here this evening is a visible sign of your support, not just for Erase Racism's work, but for all of our work. And it is deeply appreciated by me and by all of the members of my board and staff. And I really do hope that you will read the journal, because there are incredible stories there about each of the organizations. And I hope you'll read my letter also. I want to take a minute just to recognize publicly my board of directors. Their contributions to Erase Racism is a real labor of love. And I also must recognize Shirley Sharon-Font, who is a staff person who takes responsibility for coordinating this event. Please join me in recognizing them both. Is Shirley in the room, or is she working as always?
Oh, she's in the back.
There she is. Where are you, Shirley? Okay, thank you. Long Island is a special place. Am I right? We're special? Were some of you at the beach this weekend? There are a lot of things that people love about Long Island. And how might you complete this sentence? Long Island is among the top 10 something. Are you thinking about? Okay, so somebody has been reading. Yes, what if I tell you that when measuring black to white residential segregation for the Nassau-Suffolk region, what we call Long Island, as measured by the US Census data, that Long Island is in the top 10 most racially segregated regions in the country. And to me, that is a horrifying statistic, especially in 2014. So what does this mean? What are the ramifications of this statistic? On August 28, 2013, after a careful investigation, Erase Racism filed a housing discrimination lawsuit in federal court. Why? Because when white individuals went to an apartment building in Mineola, which had a sign out front indicating that there were vacant apartments for rent, and they expressed interest in renting a one-bedroom apartment, they were told there were vacancies and they were shown apartments. However, when African-American individuals went to the same building shortly thereafter with the same sign out front saying that there were vacant apartments and asked about a one-bedroom apartment, they were told there were no vacancies. They were quoted higher rents than what was quoted to the white individuals, or told that others were ahead of them and they should come back at a later date. None of these particular individuals were actually looking for an apartment. Part of the investigation that Erase Racism conducted in partnership with another nonprofit, the Fair Housing Justice Center, involved sending out trained testers who taped the conversations exchanged with building management. That's how we know exactly what happened to both the white and the African-American individuals. There is no doubt that housing discrimination occurred against the black testers. We are now in settlement discussions with the defendants in this case, which we hope will be resolved soon. Unfortunately, this is not a unique occurrence. This same scenario repeats itself over and over again, with testers and with people who are actually looking for housing. Other nonprofits, like the Long Island Housing Services, have found similar discriminatory results. Who is responsible for Long Island being among the top 10 most racially segregated regions in the country? I know that many people like to point to the invisible hand of the housing market as the culprit. Others say that household income is the real culprit, not racial discrimination. However, on Long Island, we are more segregated by race than we are by income. Let me repeat that because it's a little counterintuitive. On Long Island, we are more segregated by race than we are by income. In other words, when we asked Professor John Logan from Brown University, internationally known for his research in this area, to help us, he analyzed the latest US Census data for Long Island, and he found that affluent blacks live in neighborhoods with just as little contact with whites as very low-income black households. So it's not the income, it's race. It's not just what happens to individual renters. The same thing happens when people of all incomes are trying to purchase homes. African Americans, Latinos. Access to certain quality housing and high opportunity communities is frequently denied to African Americans. And although Hispanics are less segregated from whites than blacks on Long Island, the level of segregation for Hispanics is increasing. Furthermore, blacks and Latinos are typically segregated in the same high-need, low-performing schools because of the severe housing segregation on Long Island. Being in the top 10 for racial segregation comes with far-reaching implications. If you are a black student on Long Island, your chances of attending the highest performing schools is slim. Only 2.7% of the black students and 4.5% of the Latinos have access to the highest performing schools. In fact, 65% of all black public school students and 61% of all Latino students on Long Island attend the highest need, lowest performing schools. It's not just that these students do not have access to the highest performing schools, and I say this because some people have, they say, well, not everybody gets to go to the best school anyway. The 30% of the whites do get to go to the best schools. But when you listen to those statistics I just said, a significant majority only have access to the lowest performing schools. So that's the big discrepancy. Let me make one additional point on this matter. You have seen stories, no doubt, about individual black students or Latina students who have excelled in our public schools. And some of those schools are high need with very low achievement records. And we should all celebrate these individual students who beat the odds. Yes. But that does not negate the fact that these standouts are the exception. Some students will find a way to excel no matter where they are. But that is not true for most students of any racial group. So we still need an educational system that does not consistently fail so many black and Latino students and deprive all students, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, whites, of learning in a racially integrated environment in the spirit of the 60th anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. So this is a much longer discussion, and I hope that some of you here tonight will want to engage in that discussion about public school education and work on our public school equity project. You know how to find me if you're interested. But let me return to the question of who is responsible for the level of segregation on Long Island. It goes beyond the policies and practices of individual owners and managers of apartment buildings or homeowners and the real estate agents that represent them. This form of housing discrimination still goes on, and unfortunately, enforcement agencies are not aggressively enforcing existing fair housing laws. But let me tell you something else that Erase Racism has done. On April 28th of this year, Erase Racism submitted a civil rights complaint to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, presenting evidence that Nassau County discriminates against African Americans and perpetuates racial segregation in the administration of its housing and community development programs. The complaint identifies violations committed by the county itself, as well as the county's failure to enforce federal civil rights requirements on members of the Nassau Urban County Consortium. So this is a new thing, and HUD has indicated that they will investigate. You see, it matters what our local governments do and don't do. As referenced in our HUD complaint, it matters if someone who looks like me is denied access to housing that I could afford in a community that I perceive is desirable, perhaps because of the reputation of its public schools. The reality is that people who look like me are denied access to housing because of the policies by local governments that are discriminatory. For example, many communities on Long Island are overwhelmingly white, and they have stated preference that applicants for affordable housing already live in the community. Because there are so few people who look like me in those communities, blacks are systematically denied housing in those communities because of the high level of segregation. This results in reinforced racial segregation. It doesn't matter if the government intended to keep black people out. The fact is they have done it. And again, this happens all the time. So Erase Racism and our honorees and other groups on Long Island and around the country are demanding that municipal governments adhere to the obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and stop perpetuating and at times increasing the level of racial segregation in our communities. As stated in our HUD complaint, these municipalities are mandated to affirmatively further fair housing. Our towns and villages should not further racially segregated housing. We are also asking the federal government to do their job of holding local governments accountable. You can find out more about this complaint and a lot of our work on our website, and certainly you can talk with me and you can talk with our new staff attorney, Camille Dean. Camille, where are you? Will you raise your hand so people know where you are? So who is responsible for Long Island being among the top 10 when it comes to racial segregation? There are plenty of culprits. Most importantly, our governments are too frequently on the wrong side of this issue, and that needs to change. Because we live in a democracy, however, ultimately, we the people are responsible. We are responsible for our institutions, what governments do or do not do. Each and every one of us is responsible. To help you do your part to hold government accountable to further fair housing and ensure equal access to quality public school education, I am currently evaluating candidates to fill a Long Island organizer position at Erase Racism. You may have heard about the Partnership for Racial Equity. Many of you here are members. The partners were very helpful in 2006 when we were working on strengthening the fair housing laws that I mentioned earlier here on Long Island. At that time, in addition to Erase Racism staff, many partners from various communities on Long Island supported passage of this legislation by attending county public hearings or contacting their local legislator. With this new community organizer position, we will increase our capacity to engage our partners. If you already signed up to be a partner, then right below your badge, there's a little banner that says partner. If you don't have one of those little banners and you're interested, there is a form on your table where you can sign up and stick it in the bag. In closing, Erase Racism is on a mission to stop housing discrimination and unequal access to quality public schools. I know that some people frame the problem differently, but we have data to refute all the myths. For example, that blacks only want to live with other blacks, that the problem is income segregation and not race discrimination, and that Black and Latino students can't learn in an environment with a rigorous curriculum. There's plenty of evidence to refute those myths, but people still repeat them frequently. We are clear about our mission. It's not okay to deny Black and brown families housing choice. It's not okay to provide affordable housing for Black and brown families only in communities with concentrated poverty and very high need and low performing schools. It's not okay to maintain racially segregated schools. We should do better, we can do better. Please join me in helping to move Long Island into the top 10 for racial integration. Thank you very much.